Okay. Okay. Good morning, Dr. Jawad, Kok Yeong, and fellow classmates. My name is Yeong-nam. This morning, I'm going to present to us the mini project 1. The project that I'm working on is called the Churn analysis of Telco customers. Firstly, what is churn? Churn in the telco world is a very important parameter because it means attrition. So the telco operators have invested billions of dollars into their network, and churn is like a leaking bucket. The more it leaks, that means that the more the effort goes to waste, and also the investment gets into trouble. So in looking at the churn analysis, what do we hope to achieve? There are 3 R's that we hope to achieve in this business challenge, and that is to enable proactive development of focused customer programs, not just to reduce churn, stop the leak, but also to find out where the possible leaks are coming, and also to prevent new leaks. So this is the 3 main purpose, I call it 3 R's of the business challenge. How do we go about the analysis? Firstly, we need to understand what is driving churn. For our purpose of analysis, we've broken churn into 3 different categories to understand the impact. First category is on demographics. What kind of customer, what kind of gender are they from? Do they have dependents? And understanding the customer. The second category is on services. What services do those customers subscribe to? And what is they like or don't like about the services? And number 3 is on customer account. How that account is managed? What kind of contract do they have? Is it a month-by-month contract? How much money charges do they pay? And so forth. Do they get value for their services? So this is the data set that we'll be looking into with 3 different categories. Now, next, let's look at the analysis. Firstly, we need to ask ourselves, is there really a problem with churn? Because if there's no problem with churn, there's nothing to continue on. But if there is, then that's where we can go deeper into the investigation. So from the data set that we have, we found that the churn, which is defined as the number of subscribers who are lost over the total number of subscribers for that period. That's the definition of churn. That accounts for 27%. So if you look at the graph here, yes means churn, no means no churn. So the proportion is 27%. Then the question is, how does that compare? Is it too high? Is it too low, or what? So I did some research and find that the average industry churn for telecom operators is 21%. So 27% is actually quite high compared to the industry norm. Now, this is based on subscribers. How about translated into lost revenue? How much would that churn cost the operator for this period? Again, we did the same analysis, but this time around based on total charges, meaning total revenue that the operator would have incurred or have lost as a result of churn. And that comes up to 18%. So we see here that based on this high-level analysis, there's indeed a problem with churn for this operator. Now, let's look into what are the contributors of churn based on the different categories that we have discussed earlier: demographics, services, and customer account. Firstly, from demographics, if you look at the graph here, basically it talks about 4 different parameters on demographics: gender, senior citizen, partner, and dependent. You'll find that for those people who churn, there's no difference between the male and the females. We are about the same. And most of them do not seem to have any dependents. They are young. They do not have partners or dependents, so they are very mobile. Now, in analyzing the churn, we are not just looking at those people who churn, but how about those who don't churn? Do we see the similar or different behavior? So you compare with those people who don't churn, it's basically about the same profile, no difference between sexes, and most of them are young, and they also do not have dependents, but apparently this group of people who are churning seem to have a bit more freedom in terms of their obligations. So this is one point that we have take away. They are young, they have no dependency, they are risk takers, meaning that it's easy for them to jump ship without any worries. Next, we look at services. What kind of services do they subscribe to? For those people who churn, most of them subscribe to basic phone services. And of course, they go for internet services using fiber optics. What do they use it for? For streaming TV, for movies, and so forth. Now, what is interesting about this graph is this part here, where they do not subscribe to security, backup, protect, and support. These are the services. You'll see later on that even though they pay more monthly charges, yet they don't include all these things. So it's something to look into further. Why is that so? Now, compared to the general, there are those who don't churn. The similar characteristics, but again, we see that those people who do not churn, they do have all these services: security, backup, protect, support, technical support, and so forth. So we can see that there's a difference here. Perhaps it's something that is contributing to some kind of product dissatisfaction because they do not have all these services available. This is something to be investigated further. The third impact is to look at the impact of customer account, whether it's paperless billing, contract, payment, monthly charges, and tenure. Very interestingly, month-to-month contract, most of them are coming month-to-month contract. That means that there's little disincentive for them to jump ship. And their monthly charges is, you can see here, is pretty high, and the tenure is less than about 10 months medium. So you compare the two, you'll find that compared to the rest of those who don't churn, they pay a higher monthly charges, and yet the tenure is shorter, meaning that it's easy for them to jump ship. So what's our conclusion here? Firstly, we know that there's a problem with churn, it's high. The demographics, these people are mostly young, they're less commitment. Their services, they are more consumer services. There's little stickiness in their operator. They are more consumer rather than fan. And finally, their contract terms make them really easy for them to jump ship, less than 10 months, and yet they pay higher charges. What are some things that you can do further in next steps? Firstly, we need to include possibly other features. For example, the impact of competition. We need to validate our initial findings, maybe more data points, customer survey, and finally, eventually, if we can, we do a machine learning to develop some kind of churn index that can be used for track the risk level of every customer. Okay, so this is the end of the presentation. Next, let me go to the Jupyter Notebook. So this is my Jupyter Notebook. I imported the CSV file that you do the usual data mangling and
Yeong-nam, sorry to interrupt you. I cannot see the Jupyter Notebook.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just share again. All right. Can you see now? Okay, so this is my Jupyter Notebook. We do the usual import all the libraries, and then to import the CSV file and do some mangling. You'll find that most of the columns are objects, except for a few like tenure, monthly charges, and the total charges is an object. So I have to change it to an integer, to a floating. So I did this here. I realized that there are missing string spaces inside the total charges. So I have to find a way to remove those missing spaces and convert them into a float. And this is how I get the total charges as a float. After we do this, then we went through the usual checking for null, checking for, and also because the tenure is separate, is a different column, so we try to group them together into the same category as the rest of the customer account. So I moved the column or tenure to the later part of the data frame. And did all the usual missing values and do the profiling, find out what's the value count and so forth, and calculate the churn rate. So the churn rate is based on the number of customers we've lost over the total customer base for that period, and that's about 27%. We do the same for subscribers, and that is 18%. And lastly, we plot out the different graph, and based on that different graph, we come up with the observation. Relation between churn and demographics, and then subsequently B and C for services and for customer account. Okay, let me just quickly go through. The rest is the same. And because for monthly charges and tenure, these are very interesting because they are integers, and therefore we can do a box plot to understand where do they stand between those who churn and for those who don't churn. So you can see that their tenure is a lot less for those who churn, meaning that they stay with the operator for a short period of time. There's little customer loyalty. But yet they're paying more. As I can see here, they seem to pay more monthly charges. So they're paying more for services, but they're not enjoying the kind of support that they have for those who don't churn. And therefore, there's a greater incentive for them to jump ship. Yep, so this is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.